I tell you, this last week has been really full of surprises, and it really shouldn't be surprising, even though we're used to it. But when it comes to the issue of Palestine and Israel, holy Toledo, just when you thought you've seen insanity, you haven't seen nothing yet, right? So, as I've said in previous videos about the 2022 election of Benjamin Netanyahu as the sixth prime minister of Israel. And this is the most racist, most criminal minded organization seemingly on the face of the earth. I mean, it really gives a run to the money for Russia, Syria, and freaking Saudi Arabia, huh? But the United States takes the cake out of anybody. It's amazing to me what they can get away with. But this is what happens when you don't give somebody responsibility for their actions. They get away with it. It's like a kid, he puts his hand in the cookie jar to see if mom's going to slap him with a spatula on his hand and say, "Not before you eat." Well, with Israel, it's a kid is actually taking the whole fucking jar at this point. So there is no ceiling about what they could get away with. I mean, at this point, if you are backing the Israeli government of what they're doing right now, you do not have any argument when it comes to the moral precipice of the human condition. You have lost any empathy whatsoever. I don't care what Hamas did on October 7th. Nothing excuses for what's going on here. So much so that the International Criminal Courts, who basically turns a blind eye every once in a while when it comes to Israel, who are not co-signers of the Rome Statutes, basically has to say, all right, that's it. We got limits here. And what does the Israeli government say? Fuck you, right? And the United States are right behind them. Screw you. By the way, the United States are not co-signers. You ever wonder why they're not co-signers? It's that they don't want to be held responsible for the crimes that they commit. It's the only reason why. Why do you think they can get away seemingly with every damn crime on the face of the earth? And it makes you wonder, if you're making excuses for the Israeli government at this point, tell me what they won't get away with. Because seemingly mass murder, forced expulsion of an Arab citizenry, by the way, their own citizens, not a foreign invader. These are people that live in the country. You just imagine what they think about the rest of the world, even including the United States. They don't give a shit, right? If they treat their own citizens this way, what do you think they're going to treat to someone like me and you, right? Now, for you groypers or whatever, you Nick Fuentes fans, first of all, you're a bunch of idiots. I mean, I don't care for you racists, anti-Jews that hide behind the veil of anti-Zionism. We don't need you. In fact, you're just like them, a bunch of fanatics that want their own caliphate. I mean, Nick Fuentes basically doesn't hide it, even though I think he's playing the part. I wouldn't be surprised if this guy has a nefarious background. I can't prove it. But boy, does he make himself look the part, if you know what I'm saying. But this is exactly why we have a big problem here in the United States. And the United States has a really big problem when it comes to fascism. But it's not pertaining to just the conservatives. The Democrats, who are basically on the same side as conservatives on this issue, should make you realize that there never was a left and right government. Only when it comes to cultural issues. That's how they keep you divided from each other. And like the bunch of idiots that you are, you'll keep arguing and fighting with one another. Meanwhile, you're both the victim of a repressive government. If you are a leftist and you vote for Alexandria Cortez in New York, or Nancy Pelosi in California, or Gavin Newsom in California, you deserve everything you get. And I'm talking about the working class and the working poor. If you vote, period, you're an idiot. Voting keeps them in power. If you're going to use the argument that because I don't vote, I don't have a right to argue, well, no, you're the one who votes. You don't have the right to argue because you are voting the very people in who are causing the problems in the first place. I am not voting for criminals. You do not have the guts to do what is necessary, and that is mass protest with the left and right minded, because there is no such thing. You're a human being. You're just brainwashed. You're brainwashed to believe that there are cultural issues between the both of you. There are not. You're victims of an ideology. That's all you are. You're brainwashed to believe that you, as a green haired, purple eyed socialist, think you're any different than the pot bellied Trump supporter. You're both victims of ideology. And when you realize and you think that you're much bigger than what you are, that's when you'll realize that you're on the same team, team human. That's what it means to be a human being. You're not born a Democrat. You're not born a conservative. You're not born a Muslim. You're not born a Jew. You're not born black. You're not born white. These are ideological preferences that are taught to you from your loved ones, to your teachers, to your imams, to your priests, even to your friends and associates. You're in the matrix. It's time to unplug, because the real world, the universe, doesn't acknowledge you whatsoever. And if you think that there's a God of the universe that cares whether you put your penis in at night, or cares what color you dye your hair, you are basically delusional. Now, when I talk about the real issues at play here, I'm talking about the federal government. And this week, my God, if this doesn't tell you that we got a problem in Congress, I don't know what to tell you other than they're going to drop the bomb. Earlier today, I saw a tweet by none other than the ghoul, Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham basically tweeted this: wishing King Salman a full and speedy recovery. Saudi Arabia is a valuable ally to the United States and is pushing the region in a positive direction. You gotta fucking laugh, because if not, you're gonna go shoot yourself in the head or cry. This is a man who is standing up to one of the most authoritarian, most murderous regimes on the face of the earth. Maybe Lindsey Graham doesn't realize, or maybe he does, and this will make it worse, that it's Saudi Arabia who's interfering with the 9/11 victims' families' civil suit case, which is currently being debated in the Southern District of New York under George Daniels. By the way, Lindsey Graham, have you forgotten what Saudi Arabia did on 9/11? In fact, they played a part, and a major part. They weren't alone, only if the intelligence services did their job, foreign and domestic. Maybe they did, and that's why the 9/11 attacks were successful. But I won't go there, right? Because that's a taboo subject, and I love the taboo. Anyway, you're actually wishing well a man who murdered a U.S. journalist in Jamal Khashoggi. Yes, this man suffered a stroke, and he allowed Crown Prince bin Salman, bone crusher as he is, basically allowed to make the decision. But this is the man who is the king of Saudi Arabia, and nothing gets by him. And by the way, he's not the fully recognized king, because it should have been the bin Nayef family. But because Crown Prince bin Salman, under the orders of King Salman, who's his father, basically ordered a coup and arrested all the dissidents, using the country's military and police to enforce this coup. And they took it by force. And the United States said nothing in return, because the United States doesn't have any moral conscience. When I say the United States, I'm talking about the government, not the people. There's going to be a difference here. And when I say Israel, I'm not talking about the people. Just remember, when Netanyahu won the prime ministership in December of 2022, tens of thousands of Jews lined in the streets to protest, because they knew that the most fascist government was awaiting. And yes, there are liberal Jews that are not as far right as you like to believe. And no, they are not the enemy of humanity. Already I'm seeing you Christian fascists hijack this Gaza and Israel issue for your own perverted affairs. I say, fuck you to each and every one of you, and you know who you are. whether you're Killstream or you're Nick Fuentes or Andrew Tate and all of you fucking retards that basically are poisoning the fucking well. We don't need you. We need the rational people, the people that know the difference between a Zionist, a far-right one of the Likud party, and a regular Jew. Secondly, Lindsey Graham is no stranger when it comes to authorizing fascism in his own sense. Just remember what he said to NBC earlier this week. And I can't wait to play this one because, boy, does this guy basically take the cake. And you know what? Let me just lower myself here and let's play the videotape.
Why does Israel need the most massive bombs that can potentially level an entire block in order to wage this war? Why can't it be more precise?
Listen, you know, here's what I would say about fighting an enemy who wants to kill you and your family. Why did we drop 2 bombs, nuclear bombs, on Hiroshima and Nagasaki to end a war that we couldn't afford to lose? You don't understand, apparently, what Israel is facing. They're facing 3 groups. Iran, who has received $80 billion in aid. When Trump left office, they were exporting 300 barrels of oil a day. Now they're at 1.3 million a day. They've been enriched by Biden. They're taking that money to kill all the Jews. So when we were faced with destruction as a nation after Pearl Harbor, fighting the Germans and the Japanese, we decided to end the war by bombing Hiroshima and Nagasaki with nuclear weapons. That was the right decision. Give Israel the bombs they need to end the war they can't afford to lose and work with them to minimize casualties.
Senator, that military.
What a contradiction. We're working to minimize casualties. Drop the bomb. I swear, conservatives of this nature are the dumbest animals on the face of the earth. I always said conservatives are the retarded criminals. The Democrats are the smart criminals. By the way, if you don't know the difference because you're simple-minded, you're criminals. Doesn't matter if you're retarded or you're smart. You're a criminal. You aid and abet criminals with your vote. And I never understood how anyone could vote at any point anymore. It's almost like you think if there is no vote, then we're powerless. That's what they want you to believe. But you motherfuckers, you simple-minded people don't realize that you're more powerful than what you realize. Why do you think they come every 4 years pleading with you to send $1? Why? Because you hold the power. You hold it. You know, when they made the Constitution, basically, there was a meeting in the town hall, and Benjamin Franklin came outside, and he was asked by a woman, and the woman basically told him, "What have you done for us, the people?" And Franklin basically said, "A republic, if you could keep it." And basically, that if you allow a government to get too big for its britches, the founding fathers knew about tyranny. They escaped one in Great Britain, and they fought it here on this land. And thank goodness they won, because they created a great atmosphere for this country. They escaped religious tyranny. Here, they wanted religion to be practiced without any threat or interference from the government, vice versa. I think that's a great setup. I'm atheist, but I think everybody, if they wish to, wants to practice their faith without interference from a repressive government, and for not a government to be an authoritarian religious entity. Well, then why not? But as you could see, The tree of liberty has not been painted by the blood of tyrants for a very long time. And we allowed for the government to get away with everything from mass murder to thievery to the debasement of the American people and to people worldwide. It is our fault, the people. I know what the government is capable of. I know people like Lindsey Graham exist for a reason. Do you think this guy just woke up out of nowhere and say the things he's saying? The reason why he's saying the things he's saying is because we, the people, allow it. We don't put a limit to these people. You give them your money. You give them your vote. You give them your support because you're a victim of ideology. You're a victim. But you don't realize that in the end, you're not a victim. You are everything they fear because you have the power of what? You have the power to basically stop these people. And you don't have to do it violently. You know, as Christ said, you live by the sword, you will die by the sword. That's what he told Barabbas. And basically, we can employ the Gandhi method with peaceful protest. And how do we do it? By not supporting them with our money. If 1 million people took off work and basically protested hand in hand, that means you leftists and people of the right just stop looking at yourselves with such divisive constructs and act together as one. That's how you beat these people. You know, Jim Morrison wrote a song called 5 to 1. 1 in 5, baby. Right? What did he say? They got the guns, but we got the numbers. Well, basically, that's right. They can have all the weapons and all the guns, all they want. But they lack the one thing that we have, but we're losing. Empathy, heart, love. And that's what the Israeli government doesn't have. And that's what the US government doesn't have either. And that's why they can't understand us. It's the one thing they don't understand, because if they understood, they wouldn't be saying and doing the things that they are doing right now. But they're doing it because you allow them to get away with everything.
Officials would argue that there has been so much technology since those bombs were dropped that for that very reason, that is why Israel and other developed countries can be more precise. But let me ask it this way, because President Biden is not the first president to use arms shipments to try to influence Israeli policy. As you know, former President Ronald Reagan on multiple occasions withheld weapons to impact Israel's military actions. Did President Reagan show that using U.S. military aid as leverage can actually be an effective way to rein in and impact Israel's policy?
When you're telling the world you're going to restrict weapons delivery to the Jewish state who is fighting a three-front war for their survival, it emboldens Iran. It emboldens Hamas. Sinwar is probably juiced up on the idea there's daylight between the United States and Israel. The hostage deal is harder. This is the worst decision in the history of the U.S.-Israel relationship to deny weapons at a time the Jewish state could be destroyed. So here's what I would say. There is some hope we can get over this. Non-negotiable to the destruction of Hamas. Nobody in Israel will allow Hamas to be standing militarily or politically when this is over. How we get there is subject to negotiation. My problem is not with the weapons that Israel is using. My problem is with the tactics that Hamas is using and the idea that America would not send a nickel of aid, echoed by a United States senator when all the Jews are trying to be killed by radical Islamic groups, tells us where we're at as a nation. The Republican Party is with Israel without apology.
Well, historian.
Now, listen, where was this same energy for Saudi Arabia when they helped to create in the 1970s and 80s through the oil boom groups like Al-Qaeda, the Egyptian Islamic Jihad in Egypt, Abu Sayyaf in the Philippines, Jemaah Islamiyah in Indonesia, Boko Haram in North Africa. Where was this same energy then? Why didn't you get on national TV and threaten Saudi Arabia with sanctions? Oh, wait a minute. You're allied with that country. You know, our allies like Israel and Saudi Arabian governments are some of the worst governments on the face of the earth. And then you have the freaking nerve to basically blame other countries for their repressive actions against the people and against the world, while you are actually endorsing these actions with other countries and approving of them. And here we have a sitting US congressman basically saying that Israel should be using nuclear devices. Is this normal? Is it rational? And why is a US congressman basically advocating for a foreign government to basically use US weapons? Maybe it's because Lindsey Graham receives over $500,000 in Israeli lobby money, just like over 85% of sitting US congresspeople from the Democrats and Republicans who are basically getting a stipend every year from the Israeli lobby. Why is it that the Israeli lobby is allowed to influence American politics in favor of only Israel? If you ever go to the AIPAC, the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee's page, what do they endorse? Do they endorse US interests? Not one time. They endorse only Israel's interests. And if that doesn't tell you, I don't know what else to say other than good luck, because you're endorsing a psychopathic state. Well, Lindsey Graham isn't the only insane monster when it comes to Congress. Another guy on the rise who I can't believe is an actual character, Brian Mast. And I think with the name itself, you basically know where I'm come from. This guy basically came with an IDF uniform in the US House.
Whether you're Kevin, Steve, Jim, or anybody else, you have to answer for the decisions that you made during your time here, things that you did right and things that you did wrong. And the more that anybody humbles themselves to say, this is where I did something right, this is where I did something wrong, this is what I learned from what I did wrong in the past, the better opportunity they have to become the Speaker of the House.
Do you anticipate other people to put their names in the ring today?
Yeah, I would. The process is that you can't just say, well, this person was the second in line, so we're just going to vote on them. Our processes don't allow that.
He's wearing the IDF uniform. He served in the Israeli IDF, and now he's in Congress. Talk about bias. Holy fucking shit. Right there should tell you that we are a nation that has dual citizenry within the government itself, the government of Israel and the United States government. So how is it that we could be fair with other countries? Well, we can't, because we have a bunch of sellouts in government. And it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter whether they're Democrat or Republican. There is no such thing. They made you believe that, but they haven't fooled me. When it comes to the bigger issues, geopolitically anyway, there is no left and right. And when it comes to bills for Israel, they get passed unanimously. There's hardly any dissension. In fact, only Israel is allowed to have their own conference inside the United States where it is mandatory for you to attend. If you don't attend, you're never going to be back voted in. You may not get that bill passed if you need it for your state. That's how powerful this lobby is. And the FBI warned of this in the 1950s, basically stating that the American Zionist organization basically should be labeled a foreign entity. But the State Department said no, raise that label. And look what we have, people like Brian Mast. This is the future. And as we get each passing day, we're going to have more extremists in government. If you think this is bad, wait until I show you about the Israeli government. Maybe you should start shaking in your boots. Brian Mast is no stranger to questionable policies. In fact, Brian Mast went on the House floor and said there are no innocent Palestinians. Well, fuck it. Why not? We're killing 40,000 of them anyway. Here's what he had.
Mr. Mast, the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on Oversight and Accountability and the author of this bill.
I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman from the gentleman from Florida and my fellow veteran is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you to the submariner up front. It's a special kind of service, no doubt about it. I thank the chairman for his work on this legislation, for helping to bring it to the floor, and for his work in helping to make sure that in this body, when those of us that are in here say never again, in support.
Does this guy not look like a fucking neo-Nazi right off the bat? Bald head. All he's missing is the Doc Marten boots, which he's probably wearing right now.
Of Israel and the Jewish state, that it's something that we are doing everything possible to make sure that never again is the truth.
By any means.
And you might ask, what can this bill, what can this do in support of never again, and why? And the why on it is very simple, because October 7th didn't happen for free. October 7th didn't happen without planning. October 7th didn't happen without delivery of arms from multiple nations. October 7th didn't happen without the intelligence from multiple nations and non-government organizations and individuals. This happened as a result of a great deal of all of the above. This bill is specifically about sanctions, about making sure that we can get to the individuals or the states or the government agencies or the non-government agencies or the companies that enabled October 7th to happen. That we cut off the material support, whether that's money or equipment or something that we might label here in Washington as a dual-use item, from making it to the Gaza Strip or the West Bank or to into the hands of Hezbollah or somewhere else, from making sure that we cut off the technological support, whether it's intelligence or literally software or hardware or arms of propaganda, whether we're cutting off the financial support, the terror financing, the transactions, those that are engaging with the literal perpetrators of terrorism, doing it by blocking and freezing assets and funds, providing travel restrictions, export restrictions, financial sanctions so that they can't use our banks or financial institutions, and the list goes on. That's the work that has to be done within these walls to make sure that we can say never again. That's the work that we can do in here to make sure that October 7th doesn't happen again, and it's the work that we have to do in passing this bill to make sure that we do everything possible to prevent the kind of terrorism, the barbaric acts that the chairman spoke so eloquently about and so vividly about. So it's in that I ask my colleagues to rise in support of this bill, join us, vote unanimously in support of this bill, and I yield you, Chairman, the remainder of my time.
You know, I never seen another country get so much zealous passion than Israel. No other country I've never seen. I'm 54 and followed American politics of the last 20 years intensely. I've never seen it. Not even for one of the biggest supporters of our money, Egypt, which I think gets more money than any country on the face of the earth regarding U.S. aid. I think Egypt is number one. I think Israel is like 2 or 3. You know, we send money all around the world. You know, you wouldn't think of it with these groypers that basically think, well, we send every dollar to Israel. No, we don't. We actually give aid to a lot of countries. We do. But we get a lot more in return. So we don't, it's not like we're giving out of our, you know, because we have a heart. Remember what I said, they don't have a heart. But I mean, American politics, they're a bunch of whores and prostitutes. They'll do anything, say anything for money. Brian Mast, I think, gets $250,000 from the Israeli lobby. And that's the reason why he's going balls deep in his mouth regarding Israel. You know, yeah, I mean, you know, the one congressman that gets the most money from the Israeli lobby is Steny Hoyer, but he's been around forever. And he's a staunch AIPAC supporter. And basically, he receives, I think, $1.3 million every fiscal year regarding Israeli lobby money. But you ask yourself, how is it possible that, you know, the Israeli lobby is allowed to interfere because of you, the people? You allowed this to happen. And you're basically saying, well, how do we like? Because you vote for these people. You support these people. And to you evangelical Americans, I consider you a traitor because that's who you're voting for. Let me begin by telling you what's ahead for Israel. In 2022, November of 2022, the Likud party won the majority of the seats in the Knesset. They won 32 seats, which is headed by the Likud party under Benjamin Netanyahu. The Likud party is a major right-wing political party in Israel, founded by Menachem Begin and Ariel Sharon in 1973. Need I remind you that the majority of the original founders of Likud come from the Stern and Irgun gangs, who basically created the first Nakba and slaughtered hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, which created the state of Israel through the help of the United States and Great Britain. The next party that has the most seats is the Yesh Atid, headed by Yair Lapid. Now, the Yesh Atid basically is a centrist group headed by Yair Lapid. Even though their policies are repressive, they're not as extreme as the Likud party. But it's not these two I should be worried about. There's another party that's gaining steam and real fast. And these are the religious Zionists, headed under the ghoul Bezalel Smotrich, who basically is currently serving as the finance minister under the Benjamin Netanyahu government. The religious Zionist party is basically an extreme Jewish supremacist party, which is basically aligned with the ideology of Rabbi Meir Kahane. Rabbi Meir Kahane, who is a Jewish nationalist, who the country of Israel basically saw as too much of a fanatic. The majority or all of the people relating to the religious Zionist party, which has 14 seats, and I remember when they had just 2 seats just a couple of years ago, they're gaining steam. And these are the people that are right under the Likud party. In fact, members of the Likud party are aligning themselves with the religious Zionists. Then you have people like National Unity, headed under Benny Gantz, who was the Minister of Defense, and then Yoav Gallant became the Minister of Defense following him. And then you got the Shah Party, who are basically the Haredi religious party, and they're a bunch of nut jobs, and they have 11 seats. So, by the way, 4 of those parties, the Likud, the religious Zionists, the Shahs, are basically a coalition under Benjamin Netanyahu. And in the future, when Netanyahu is removed, and he will be removed, what's coming up after him will make Netanyahu seem like a liberal. And these are going to be the people that are praying for the removal of the world. And what I mean by that is that these are the people that believe that when the creation of the third temple happens, the Mashiach will arrive and destroy the world. And that's what they're hoping for, because some of these people actually believe that whenever all the Jews die, they're going to receive 500 Gentiles as slaves in the afterlife. Not every Jew believes this. Not every Zionist believes this either. Majority doesn't. But the members of the religious Zionists do. The members of the Shahs do. And remember, these are the people of the future of Israel. Now, just remember, look at who's in Netanyahu's cabinet currently. People like Yoav Gallant, Bezalel Smotrich, Ben Gvir, people who actually are saying live on air that they want the removal of Palestinians, dead or alive. 20 years ago, if you said that, Israel will have you arrested. Today, they're saying it outwardly. Why? This is what happens when you allow them to do whatever they want without repercussion. And if you don't hold these people accountable, if you don't allow the international criminal courts to arrest Netanyahu, to arrest Yoav Gallant, if you put sanctions on the international criminal courts, you are allowing Israel to basically say, we're going to kill the rest of the world. I'm not saying it. And I'm not anti-Semitic, because I know when to detach Zionists from Jews. They're not synonymous with one another. But I am calling for the rest of you people that have a marble left in your head. Maybe you have a piece of heart left in you, but the ideology is basically replacing it. And I'm speaking to your humanity. Stop voting for these people. Continue your protests. Not everybody is a Hamas supporter. And these young people today, they see the dangers of this fascist ideology. And it's not going anywhere. You know, Benjamin Netanyahu, you know, for all his intents and purposes, is not a victim. He's a perpetrator of violence. You know, there's this picture of him in the IDF. You know, take a look at that. You ever think this guy killed people? You ever know what the 1,000-yard stare looks like? Well, that's a perfect picture of him. And that was his IDF photograph. Look at him. Looks like a fucking murderer. The guy is a war criminal. And earlier this week, the International Criminal Courts ordered the arrest of Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. This is what Benjamin Netanyahu had to say live on air.
The outrageous decision by the ICC prosecutor, Karim Khan, to seek arrest warrants against the democratically elected leaders of Israel is a moral outrage of historic proportions. It will cast an everlasting mark of shame on the International Court. Israel is waging a just war against Hamas, a genocidal terrorist organization that perpetrated the worst attack on the Jewish people since the Holocaust. Hamas massacred 1,200 Jews, raped Jewish women, burned Jewish babies, took hundreds hostage. Now, in the face of these horrors, Mr. Khan creates a twisted and false moral equivalence between the leaders of Israel and the henchmen of Hamas. This is like creating a moral equivalence after September 11th between President Bush and Osama bin Laden, or during World War II between FDR and Hitler. What a travesty of justice, what a disgrace. The prosecutor's absurd charges against me and Israel's defense minister are merely an attempt to deny Israel the basic right of self-defense. And I assure you of one thing, this attempt will utterly fail.
There's a reason why we have rules of war. The reason why the International Criminal Courts exist. And they exist under 4 basic principles called the Rome Statutes. And they are war crimes, genocide, crimes against humanity, and crimes of aggression. The Israeli government was found guilty of all 4. In previous videos on my old channel, I basically outlined how they basically abused and perpetrated each and every one of these Rome statutes upon the Palestinian people. And by the way, the International Criminal Courts didn't just hand out arrest warrants for Netanyahu, they also handed out arrest warrants for the top leadership of Hamas. Israel is conducting a massive amounts of deaths on the Palestinians. And then they're calling it basic right to self-defense. When 9/11 happened, Al-Qaeda perpetrated these attacks by hijacking planes and crashing them into the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, in one field in Shanksville. It's not like the United States basically went to another country and killed 1 million people. Oh, wait a minute, we did. In fact, we perpetrated these crimes on countries that had no affiliation with the 9/11 attacks. And what did the people do? They protested en masse, millions of them around the world. Was there an outcry telling these people that they're all basically against the American government? No. Basically, we got support from Germany, from France, from Japan, from Iran, from Italy, from Indonesia, from Russia, from Canada. Basically saying that what the American government did was tantamount to war crimes. And they would be right. What's the difference when it comes to Israel? I'll tell you why. It's because you're all a bunch of hypocrites. That's right. All of you governments around the world that are basically calling for the actions of the International Criminal Courts to be sanctioned and for Israel to defy them are basically saying that Israel can do whatever the fuck it wants, including mass murder and the forced expulsion of its own citizenry. Well, I tell you this. What crimes do you think Israel could be found guilty of? If it's not mass murder, if it's not genocide, if it's not crimes against humanity, if it's not crimes of aggression, if it's not the forced expulsion, if it's not land raising, tell me, what crime could they possibly be found guilty of if you're finding them innocent of all of these? It's time to basically put your foot down and say we need a better future for our kids and for the Palestinians in general, as well as the Israeli Jews. You know, hundreds of years ago, before the Zionist state of Israel was created, Israel had the enjoyment of both having Jews and Palestinians living amongst each other without any type of pressure or forced expulsion or any type of right-wing ideology. They basically lived in relative peace. Sure, there were problems here and there, but nothing like we're seeing today. It's now or never, ladies and gentlemen, and we can't keep pushing for tomorrow. We have to do it now, or else who knows what these people are capable of tomorrow. Thank you for watching this video. People, take care, and I'll see you in the next video.